This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell. Joining me today are the Toledo Symphony's president and CEO, Zach Vassar, also the TSO's marketing director, Felicia Canny, and we have two special guests in the studio with us today, Courtney Hutton, who is a video producer from right here at WGTE, and also the president emeritus of the Toledo Symphony, Robert Bell, or I can call you Bob, right?
I hope so.
Thank you for joining us today. In honor of your appearance, Mr. Bell, I actually have a little welcoming sound effect for you. Let's see if I can find it here. There we go.
So foreboding.
Yeah. Because for people who don't know, you are a timpanist. You started playing with the Toledo Symphony when you were 17, right?
That's about right.
Yeah, just like a couple of years ago.
Well, maybe 10.
Maybe 10 years ago. And, you know, you're a legend in Toledo Symphony circles, so we're glad that we have you here to talk about our subject at hand today, which is TSO and HD. We're going to talk all about that. This is a subject that has sort of cropped up a few times during the course of this entire podcast. I know, Zach, you were talking about it months ago when we were here with Hélène Trudel and talking about that. And we even talked about it last week with Giordano Bellincampi for those concerts that we talked about just a moment ago. So it's something that has really taken off, and we're here to talk all about it, the history of it, how it came to pass, what are the advantages of TSO and HD, and what are the possibilities for the future. First of all, if people don't know what I'm talking about, who wants to tell us what TSO and HD is? Bob, you want to chime in there with that? Hang on. Okay.
See, I'm not sure. Is that Mahler second? No, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Actually, I think it was Spaceballs.
Oh, Spaceballs. Okay. Sounds more like it.
Yeah.
Well, we have two large screens on either side of the Peristyle stage with projection from the back of the auditorium. And we, together with the team from WGTE, with Courtney, who's with us today, we have cameras that are set up on either side of the stage, plus some remotes. And then Courtney and I sit in the back, and with the score and with her very carefully aligned shot schedule, we then, throughout the concert, sort of take images of different parts of the orchestra as they're playing. So you can see close-ups of the various players, either as solo or ensemble, so forth.
Well, you make it sound probably much easier than it is behind the scenes with all the machinations that have to go on. How did this get started? What was who came up with the idea for TSO and HD?
I think probably this all happened under Zach's immediate predecessor, Kathy Carroll, and probably the first big event we did with this was when we did the Beethoven Ninth at the Huntington Center with the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it. I don't remember exactly how all that got put together, but then there were a couple of instances in succeeding seasons where we did do it occasionally. Not at the level that we've gotten it to now. There's much more emphasis, much more investment in both equipment and preparation and so forth. So it's now become, thanks again to Zach and his team, we were able to get the funding, which, if you'd like to talk about that, how we're actually able to afford to do this.
Well, that's always a big concern.
Yes, well, and also a major investment in equipment, too.
Yeah. It's true. So, you know, I think the reason it keeps coming up on our discussions is that it's different, and not many orchestras are doing something like this. So that's different for soloists, it's different for conductors when they come in from out of town to see these massive screens. And some use them, but they use them in different ways than I think we are. So to do a simulcast in the hall, as opposed to recording something for streaming online, for example, it brings people into the concert experience in a different way. And because that's different, and because it's innovative, we've been able to go out into the corporate community and find underwriting for it. So Buckeye Broadband came on as our sponsor for this season, and they've signed on for next season as well. And they were very excited to get involved because it ties in with their mission, and it shows their commitment to doing things that are innovative. But we need that kind of support because we have a production team backstage making this thing happen during the concert. We have very expensive projection requirements and materials that we have to rent for an entire week of rehearsals and performances. So it becomes very expensive. So
it's like the production values and the level of work that has to go into actually creating the production of the concert is elevated quite a bit.
It is. So, but the experience is so much more elevated. So that's why the expense, I think, is worthwhile in the end. And the reason other orchestras aren't doing it is because they'll run away from the expense.
Right. Now, there are a lot of different things that I'm curious about when it comes to TSO and HD. And one of the things that pops to mind is, how does it affect the musicians? How does it affect even the conductor, the performers? We heard Giordano Bellincampi talking last week a little bit about saying, catching a glimpse of himself on the big screen and all of a sudden feeling self-conscious because he wants to make sure, is everything that I'm doing, does it have a purpose, right? So these are the kind of thoughts that we're creating now. Do you have instrumentalists, I wonder, who are thinking, okay, I really can't scratch my nose because they'll think I'm picking my nose, or I have to really...
I haven't heard that level of detail. I have heard some people say that they're a little more careful in their pre-concert preparations when it comes to how they appear and whether they did their hair and that kind of stuff. So
right.
I don't think musicians on a stage can see around the corner to the screens as much. Maybe some of the violinists and cellists.
The strings.
Yeah.
Most of the strings have said something to us about that, about being able to. And it's funny because if you're backstage and I'm watching, all of the cameras at the same time. So it's funny because if you're, filming like an oboe solo or something, you'll look up to the cellos and they're all kind of like peeking around, and you could tell that they're looking right at the screen.
Yeah.
There was a funny moment in the Mahler concert when the cameras were showing an oboe solo, and the woman who's playing English horn took a swig out of her water bottle.
Oh, yep.
You should give them all TSO flasks from now
yes,
on.
we need to brand this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Everyone gets TSO, apparently.
Perfect.
It's interesting, though, because it has... I wonder what the effect is on the musicians as a whole, because it gives them more of a sense of being a part of a larger whole, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Larger than the sum of its parts. They're getting a little bit of attention, and they never really know when the camera's going to be on them, do they?
Not necessarily. Yeah. The cameras don't have the red light on it to say I'm broadcasting.
Yeah.
So
I'm just wondering if it kind of raises their level of engagement at all.
What do you think,
have you
Bob?
sensed that at all?
Well, I think they're probably also intrigued with it because we believe it will help build audiences.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a more engaging way for people to participate in the listening experience with the close-ups. And suddenly, I think the next thing, we should have baseball cards of these people, right?
Yeah.
We did do that one season.
Excellent.
And then get a little autograph there, whatever.
But you have to give out a piece of bubble gum with each baseball card.
But make sure
as long as they don't unwrap it during the concert.
Cough drop. A cough drop.
Cough drops, yeah. Baseball cards and cough drops. This is great. We hope that nobody listens to this and steals all of our ideas.
I know. Should we censor ourselves a little bit more?
So I want to talk about what happens in the preparation of this, because if you just come to the concert, you might come to the mistaken conclusion that this is very easy to do and that you all know exactly where to shine the light at every point of the performance. So I'd love to hear from Courtney and from Bob. What are you doing 2 weeks before a concert? I see you guys meeting in the office with scores, so I know you're doing something. But tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
We're actually just hanging out with Clara. That's all we're doing whenever we're in the office.
To clarify, Clara is Bob's dog.
Yes. She's actually the mastermind behind all the shot lists, is what I like to say. Nice. She's at all of our meetings.
Nice. It's like Wagner's dog wrote all of his music. You know that, right?
Dogner.
Yeah, Dogner. We talked about that. Every time he hit a chord the dog liked, if the dog would react, then Wagner would scribble it down.
So that's why we have the Tristan chord? Is that because Dogner liked it?
I think it's completely not true, but it's a great story.
It is.
Well, maybe we should start where it starts, and then Courtney will have a lot of detail. I brought scores, Brad. I thought maybe you would take a look at score, and you could just get a sense from that of how this looks.
Which one is that?
Symphony
that's the
number
Brockner,
1.
but here, there's the Serenade, which has fewer in it. But
do I get to keep these? Or
well,
no?
They're in the archives. So you'll see there
Yeah.
these little dots.
with numbers, right?
Right.
The 1 and the 2.
And then you'll see some green dots and some yellow dots. The yellow dots are for soloist. Green dots are for conductor.
So the serenade started with Merwin, and there's a big yellow 1. You obviously started to focus on Merwin.
Right. Without getting into too much detail, you'll see there are probably in the Mahler Symphony, there are probably about 400 cues. And then what happens is that this gets put on in print, and then Courtney takes this, and then she assigns a camera to each one of those shots. And but what happens in the 2 weeks before is a lot of listening and a lot of figuring it out. And once it's done, then Courtney and I meet, and then there are numerous revisions after that.
Yeah.
So, Courtney, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, so Bob goes through the score on his own first, and he's looking at it purely from a, in a perfect world, this is a good part to highlight, and oh, well, the violin does this little, there are 2 notes of pizzicato, and that would be great to get on the screen. And then so when I come in to listen to it, part of what I'm doing is trying to figure out if it's actually possible to do, because sometimes visually it just doesn't quite work, and it can be distracting to do too many cuts too quickly. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about is, where does it make sense musically versus visually, and can they work together? Because I remember, which concert was that, Bob? That was it Symphony Fantastique, where there was that little 3-note pizzicato.
Oh, right.
Was that
we
fourth
wanted to get
movement
the head rolling down the steps.
Yeah, and we got it.
Did you actually just roll a head down in front of the timpani? And
we had hoped that the pre-concert lecture set people up for that, so they had the visual image of it.
So Bob kind of helps me out with places where it would be cool to get this, but it's not necessary, versus something like that where he said, the people who will get this will think it's very cool that we put it up on the screen because it's such an important moment and it actually has meaning to it. So we go through and we listen to a recording of the score, and Bob is calling out the numbers while I'm following along on, basically I just have a printed out Excel sheet, right? So his number 1 matches my number 1, and my number 1 actually tells me what it is, because I actually can't read music. So I rely a lot on Bob to tell me what's going on.
He's translating for you.
Exactly.
She's learned quite a lot, I must say.
I have.
So, not only composers, about special effects. She knows pizzicato.
I know what Lenyo means. I know what tremolo is.
Right.
Things I didn't know before.
Right.
And I can kind of follow along with, I know on a page if it's going to go from the top of the score to the bottom on the same page. I know what those little marks are. I don't know what they're called. Clearly, I don't have a music background. But
well, that's okay.
So it helps me because I can kind of follow along with Bob. He'll take his finger and go across the score so that I can see how much time it is from one dot to the next dot.
Yeah, looking at the Mahler score, you also have to speak German because of all these.
There's so
German
many
phrases on here.
complexities, though, because if you think about it, sometimes there are repeats in a score, and you have to go back, and you probably handle those differently, right?
Well, we do.
That's sort of. Bob usually just does, and I think there are repeats somewhere in one of those, aren't there?
There are, right.
Yeah.
So this is sort of an analog process that you have before it gets to the cameras, right? I mean, Bob is looking at a paper score, he's talking to you, and you're looking at an Excel chart or what have you, and then you're giving cues. So all the cues have been preset, right? Cameras know where they're supposed to point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a microphone, and you're talking to people on it.
Yeah.
Give us an example of what you would do on the microphone.
An example of what I do on the microphone. So I'm translating from what Bob is saying to the cameras, and so I take that shot list that we go through in Bob and I's meeting, and it's 1/2 puzzle, 1/2 art. So first and foremost, can my camera situations actually match? The camera 4 has a good shot of the concertmaster, but camera 3 does not because she's behind him. So kind of piecing that out, can camera 4 actually do shot 8 to 9? Well, no, because it's concertmaster followed by timpani. He can't do that. They're too far away. And so once I figure that out, I go back and I make shot lists for each camera operator. So Caitlin
So they have a list of what their numbers are?
They do. And
who the shot is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so they finish one shot and then they have to set up the next one, right?
Exactly. So they know exactly where they're supposed to be going. Occasionally they get lost, especially whenever it gets really fast with, a lot of numbers coming very quickly.
What do you do then?
conductor.
I'm talking to them the whole time.
We default to the conductor.
We generally do have a safety shot, which is that back camera that's facing straight on at the conductor.
Yeah.
So that's usually up at all times. Occasionally, we have to take that camera for a timpani shot or a percussion shot. But
now we know the secret. Like if you're lingering on the conductor for a long time,
there you go.
Everybody at Courtney's backstage
For
going,
the
"Where
rest of the
where are
show."
we? Where are we?"
You'll hear that sometimes. You'll hear me ask Bob what number we're on because we've gotten lost, and sometimes when the music swells, I can't hear a cue, and then I get lost because I didn't hear Bob say 57, so then I didn't take 57, so then I'm on the conductor until we figure out what our next shot is.
What I love is that you're talking to camera people who know what an oboe looks like and where they sit.
That's
and then
half the battle.
Then if you're going to switch over on one of the robotic cameras to catch a cue within a very specific set of string players,
Right.
that you know where to go to find them.
I said oboe, not clarinet.
It's that's actually something that we struggle with a lot, is that we generally have the same camera operators. So Mark and Caitlin are generally our stage cameras, and they've done most of the concerts that we've done since we did the first one back in 14, 15, whatever, which one that was. I think it was the Joshua Bell one was the very first one. I've directed everyone in the Peristyle, so I'm always on the crew, and so it's obviously Bob. Occasionally we bring in a new camera operator, scheduling conflicts, and that's always fun to try and explain to them.
It's like, good luck.
What you need to do, now here's my idea for how to completely solve all of these problems, right? You just have each particular person that you're going to do a focus on wear a different colored shirt or tuxedo, or they can have like a big number and different colors.
That's what we did when we originally started this. We put different colored sheets on the red sheets on the brass, or yellow sheets on oboes and stuff. We actually did something like that.
And
So
here I thought I was so
Like a
smart.
train.
Well, apparently you are. So
Apparently.
Great minds think alike.
Now, are you talking about when we did the rehearsals?
well, I think these were for the kids' concerts. That was,
Okay.
Yes, we did them for young people.
Yeah, because we've done the young people's
right.
concerts.
And by the
I
way,
think,
that is something we
consistently.
do as well as the classics concerts. We do all the educational
In
concerts.
the HG?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we have a different screen, but it's still HD.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
little
single
bit
screen.
different in our process, just because with classics we're trying to think about it very mindfully from an artistic standpoint.
Absolutely.
With the young people's, we're also thinking about the fact that it's educational, so we don't try to do as many quick cuts because we want to linger on the instruments, because that's what the kids are there to see. We want to make sure that they get exposure to the right things.
Who can talk a little bit about the audience feedback for this? Because I hear that it's popular. I'm assuming that you've gotten a lot of good feedback.
There are inevitably going to be people who don't like the screens because they're visually different than what they've seen in the Peristyle for many years. But the feedback that we've gotten is that it helps people to hear the music differently. And if you think about people's attention span usually wanes after 12 minutes of focusing on something. So if you don't have the screens there after 12 minutes, after your overture, more or less, that's when people start to look through the program book and try to figure out what else they can occupy their mind with. With those screens, though, and we see this both in the educational concerts for the young people's concerts and also for the classics concerts, people are staring at the stage or at the screens much more. So we capture that attention and we keep them engaged, and then the metrics that come out of our post-concert surveys give us much higher scores on perceived quality of musicianship, something that they can actually grasp by seeing how hard everybody's working all the time to play the instruments as well as they do.
Well, and one of the things that I really loved watching it myself was seeing the conductor up close.
You normally see their backs.
Yeah, it puts
Right.
you in the POV of the instrumentalists, of the orchestra, and you think, wow, so that's what they're doing, right?
Right.
That we don't normally see.
And we try to orchestrate that in a way that you're seeing the conductor at the right moments.
Yeah.
I mean,
Despite the default setting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's intentional.
So, if you think about the attention span, but then you also, Bob mentioned growing audiences, this is a sort of thing where if you're a new listener and you don't know the repertoire and you don't know what you're supposed to be listening for, and those are the common reasons that people don't choose to come to a symphony. This helps you through that, and it's not a spoon-fed sort of idiot's guide to the orchestra. It's a very direct, very engaging way to immerse yourself in the art form, and the feedback has been great. The unique things that you get to see. Just thinking back to the Mahler concert, the winds at many points put their bells up in the air and play like Benny Goodman style. You wouldn't see that from the audience without the screen. So you get to see things like that.
So all of the seats at the Peristyle are really wonderful seats now because of the screens.
It's limited viewing there from certain sections.
From certain sections that are really close to the stage.
If you're on the side.
Right.
I loved how you mentioned attention span earlier because I brought my 4-year-old daughter to just watch the first half of the Bernstein-Mahler concert, and she made it. I was
she
so
made it all the way
excited.
through. What does she call Merwin? You posted that on social media. No?
Morwin.
Yeah. I'm going to start calling him Morwin from now on.
Me
That's
too.
Cute.
Me too. But I think the funniest response was the perception was that we had improved somehow the acoustics of the Peristyle because of the screens, because people are watching what they're hearing, and they're hearing better because they are capturing that fabric so much more. And you think about what the museum has expressed to us, the values of visual literacy. I think that this is a audio version of that, where seeing makes you hear better.
That's a really interesting concept. The idea of somehow, because people are more engaged with their visual cortex, their audio cortex is enhanced as well.
If I can actually speak to that too, because that's one of the things that, when Bob and I are doing our background, I am that audience member who never ever listened to a symphony. I'd never listened to classical music, and the first time I was told that I was supposed to be directing these shows, I kind of rolled my eyes because I was like, oh my gosh, symphony music, this is going to be stuffy and boring.
I'm going to bring my crossword puzzle with me.
Exactly. Now I'm converted. I listen to it on my own time because I enjoy the music. And for me, I think how many people are there like me who have never been to a symphony performance, who've never listened to this music. And so that's sort of part of my goal is taking Bob's perspective and then my inexperienced perspective and merging the two, and I have that same reaction where I think, oh my gosh, I can hear a bassoon. Even though there's all this other noise, I can hear the bassoon underneath it because I know I'm supposed to look for the bassoon.
And you know what a bassoon is now.
And I know what a bassoon is.
Not an oboe.
You're making me think of a story I read the other day that took place down near Dayton. A gentleman was decided because the weather was so nice, he took his bassoon outside and was practicing outside, and somebody called the cops.
I saw that.
He called the police because they thought he had some kind of weird rifle sitting out in the parking lot.
Oh my gosh.
So, those bassoons have been known to kill people, so you have to watch out.
Careful that.
Dangerous sounds.
Speaking as a former bassoonist.
Well,
myself.
a recovering bassoonist, as I like to call you.
I've long since recovered.
I love what you say, Courtney, about how you've gotten to see the orchestra world from the backstage and develop a love for it. I'm very happy to hear that. I would also ask Mr. Bell. I'd also ask Bob.
Mr. Vassar.
Hang on. There we go.
Now it's complete.
Now you may speak.
Now I may speak. What have you come to appreciate from the production process? Just as Courtney has learned about classical music, what is your baptism in the production world of cameras and video?
Actually, what I've felt has been important is how to engage and how to make it more of a poetic experience and just say, oh, there's a horn, oh, there's a bassoon or whatever. It's got to fit in the right place, and you introduce the conductor at the right time, and you get those little cute things which nobody is going to see. And a contrabassoon, that's and I can hear it. It's that kind of stuff. That's what I really like about it. And I'll be fair, we get a few timpani shots now and then. But, Sally, our timpanist, is in the back and kind of surrounded by double basses. And then for the last concert, we actually had Sally and Jordan with 8 timpani, and you would never have known if there were any there.
You're talking about the poetic moments, Bob. What I do love about the production elements that have really come along this year are the fade in, the blur factors, the moving into focus. It's beautifully done. It's not just horn, bass, conductor, violin.
Right, exactly. That's all in Courtney's world, and she's done a great job there.
That's kind of where we start. When I was saying earlier about watching Bob helps me track across the score for timing, is that I'm giving my camera operators those cues of how, speed up, slow down. I want to push in, I want to pull out here. Occasionally, I'd say it's about a 50-50 split between me telling them what to do and them giving me something of their own, because they're very creative as well. And Caitlin, one of the biggest things she did at the Mahler, which was just so cool, something that you wouldn't think to tell someone to do, is there's something called a lens extender, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It makes your lens extend out, so you can't pull out as wide because it's getting tighter shots, and it affects the iris of the camera and all these kinds of things. And it's a tool that you're not supposed to use live. Nobody would think to do it live, but Caitlin is so good at what she does, and she was writing the iris on her camera so that very last big cymbal crash, she actually flipped her extender at the exact moment, so you saw this instant massive wide pull out from the percussion section timed with the cymbal, which was just so cool. And those kinds of things I let the camera operators do, because after a couple of rehearsals, they get into the music too, and they have, I've got 12 shots in this movement, what can I do with these 12 shots? So they can really focus in and try something new.
Are there any ideas on the horizon for how to even enhance that even more? Because when you're talking about that sort of little special effects on the fly, I'm thinking maybe you could add some Snapchat filters. Maybe you could do a little face swap kind of thing.
A kiss cam.
It would be, take it to the next level.
We did have a couple get engaged with the use of our screens, not necessarily our cameras, but Courtney and I were able to work together. There's somebody who wanted to propose to his girlfriend, so in the midst of our standard upcoming performances on the screens before the concert, at the appropriate time, the screens darkened. Up comes the proposal, stayed there for exactly a minute, and I could hear from backstage applause and gasping, and you presume she says yes because people seem to be very happy.
Well, that'd be a bummer if she said no.
That's
right. On the big screen.
Well, let's go on with the concert.
So I don't think we'll get to a kiss cam, but we did make one matrimony possible.
Yeah. Well, we've got just a minute or two left. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Zach, as we...
I think that in many ways, Bob deserves a lot of credit for the mechanical construct of what happens on the screens, because of your familiarity with the scores and with the music and your ability to communicate that to creative professionals who can visualize it. But I want you to know that I see this as yet another great contribution that you've given to the orchestra and sharing music in such an innovative way with the audience, Bob.
Part of your legacy, definitely, for the orchestra. Well, that's about all the time that we have today. I want to thank all of you for coming in. Our regular panelists, Zach Vassar and Felicia Canny. A special thank you to Courtney Hutton, and also to President Emeritus of the Toledo Symphony, Bob Bell. Thanks for coming in today, Bob. I'm Brad Cresswell, and you've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab, which is generously underwritten by a gift from the estate of Barbara Garwood and is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony. You can download episodes of this program as a podcast by going to our website at WGTE.org or subscribing on Apple Podcasts. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab here on FM 91.